Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mason Sports Recap. My name is Rodney Rhodes, and I'm joined alongside here with Shaun Gervase. Well, we're going to show you the 2024-2025 George Mason Athletics this year. We've got a lot of highlights to break down from both men and women, and we've even got some top 10 plays for you guys here today. Now first, Shaun, you have been the voice here at George Mason practically this year. You have called over 55 games this year in the academic sport calendar, which is over 2 a week. What have you seen from Mason Athletics this year as a whole and from our athletes?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great year overall for all of the athletics. I think in recent memory, this has been one of Mason's best years, pretty much overall. When you look at the numbers, 3 A10 champions across all sports, one of them being the women's basketball team, first in program history. We're going to get into that a little later. Both, and then track had a great year as well. Women's indoor track and field got a championship, and men's outdoor track and field got one just about a week ago. And then when you look at the regular season champions, we had the men's soccer team get theirs first in program history, along with the men's who tied VCU. And then even outside of the field, we had Allie Tyler, who dominated a conference at A10 in the Hampton Aquaplex. She got the Atlantic 10 Scholarship Award postgraduate. I mean, all around, all athletes here had a great year.
The George Mason University soccer team was the biggest shock of them all this year. The Atlantic 10 Conference has been dominated by St. Louis and Dayton over the past 4 years, but George Mason, after starting 4-0, looked like they were never going to stop. The biggest surprise, they started out 13-4-1 to end the year. They were 8-2 at home. They only had 9 total wins over their past 3 seasons before entering in this 2024 season. Shaun, were there any players this year, or what was the biggest reason to the success?
Yeah, I think mostly it's Rich Costanzo. Entering his 3rd year with the program, finally gets some consistency within everything. He really implemented that winning culture that this program really needed to really get along. He was the A10 Coach of the Year for men's soccer across the conference. When you look at this quote from Henry Waxman, Rich has taught us the importance of good discipline, high character, and how to develop into winners. The players bought into this winning culture, everything, the standard of winning that they needed, and it showed. And then when you look at standout players, 5 different players were on the A10 second team, 2 forwards, 2 defensemen. And then it was highlighted by graduate student Merrick Gonda, who had 8 goals, 3 assists, and 51% of his shots went on the goal.
Shaun, that was a big first on everything. First time in program history winning in the A10 regular season. First team in the country to elapse 13 wins, and the first time the program has ever been ranked in the past 10 years. The fall sports was fully dominated by the men's soccer team. Let's get into winter sports next.
Now for the sport that most Mason students look forward to during the winter. It might get cold outside, but these basketball teams were hot. Mason was stuck at 20 wins for the past 2 years, but this year the men's basketball team finally broke through. 27-9 record overall, 15-3 in conference, and 18-2 home record. That's the best one in 6 years. Once this team got into in-conference play, they really started to get hot. 8-2 in their last 10 games. Rodney, what put this team over the top?
Well, on these highlights that we're about to show here for everyone, it's going to look like the offense put it over, but really it was George Mason's defense. We'll start with Jared Phillips, who won the A10 Defensive Player of the Year. He held opponents to 29% shooting from the floor. He had over a steal a game. The team came into the year losing even their leading scorer, Keyshawn Hall. We'll bump that defensive side over into the offensive side because enter Mr. Jalen Hayes. Jalen Hayes had a 14-7-1 game. He had a 17-8-2 game in the A10 championship game. Absolutely monster inside of the paint. At 6'8", 265 pounds, he excelled using that big body of his, ladies and gentlemen. Not only was he the anchor at the 5, but really an anchor for the team. They got all the way to the Atlantic 10 conference title game for the men. They even tied VCU for the regular season A10 Atlantic championship. Unfortunately, they were not able to win the A10 championship, losing that game by 5. But Shaun, what can we see for the future here at George Mason for the men's basketball team?
Honestly, I think it's really bright. The aim is obviously VCU. You have to beat the Rams in postseason play and in conference. In regular season, they had a 20-point loss in the regular season against VCU, then had a fantastic outing in the championship game, just came up a little short. Honestly, I think you really try and implement that defensive culture. That can get you a long way in postseason play, but it's also bringing in new players to replace. Jalen Hayes is going to be gone. So is Darius Maddox. You have to replace those scoring leaders who were also on the A-10 second teams. They brought in 3 different players that averaged over 13 a game to come into this program and are now, they're going to be looking to continue that success. They're not a surprise anymore. Mason is on the scene. They will be in contention next year. But even though the men had a bunch of success, we now look at the women who had an even better year.
The George Mason women's basketball team was no joke this year, Shaun. They were 23-8 last year. This year, 27-6 overall. They upgraded on their wins, and they were 14-4 in conference, 10-3 at home. They were a dominant team across the Atlantic 10 all year. Why is that, Shaun?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it's their depth. When you look at their star players, Paula Suarez was the A-10 most improved player. She had 142 assists on the season, averaging 12, 3, and 4 on the year. That was 70 more assists than any other player on the roster. Then you look at Zahira Walton, the star player for this Mason team, 15, 6, and 2 on the year, 8th in scoring in the A-10. She was also 7th in the A-10 in steals per game. So not only an offensive weapon, but also on the defensive side, can really lock it down. Kennedy Harris has improved tremendously on the year, 14, 2, and 2. And then Nalani Kasia at the 5. She was 3rd in rebounds in the A-10 and 3rd in block shots a game with 1.2. Honestly, their depth really carried them far in this season. Unfortunate part is they're going to lose some players.
They will be losing some players, but they will be retaining Walton and Kennedy, and they do have a bright future to look forward to. Having been no joke last year, and then building upon that success from last year into this year, they will be a team in the Atlantic 10 for years to come that will have future success. NIL might have a say in that, with players now moving across the country to different schools, even across the A-10 into the SEC, ACC. But overall, George Mason has built a solid foundation with creating a great depth at bench, not only within their starting 5. In that bench, they have created solid depth, and they have many years to come of great success. Having now, though, just looked at winter, let's get into the spring. We'll still have action here in the spring this year. Let's look at the men's baseball team.
Well, Rodney, we got one more team going at this point, the baseball team. And it's been a hell of a turnaround season. Last year, a bit of a disappointment after in 2023, they went to the NCAA regional game in Winston-Salem. They lost, of course, to Florida State, but bounce back year, they are hot with a 35-17 overall record. And it's really been because of one reason, the offense.
Like you said, Shaun, that offense is red hot right now. Let's just look at some of their stats in the entire NCAA. They're 14th in the country in scoring, 5th in batting average at .333, 7th in hits, 8th in runs, 7th in stolen bases, and they have the 6th best OBP average at .439. They also love to play small ball. They're 5th in sacrifice bunts. Normally pitching can get it done for you, but this season, the George Mason offense has just been at an all-time high. They have looked fantastic all year round, and they want to continue that going in the playoffs. Shaun, what have you seen this year from the George Mason baseball team?
Yeah, I think they had a really great series against Rhode Island where they took it 2-1. That gave them the leg up in the conference over Rhode Island, which both of those teams are prolific scoring teams. All year long, they have put up runs on runs on runs. You just noted the stats in the NCAA. Rhode Island is just up there with them as well. Now, they did just have a tough loss to Davidson in the middle game a week ago that has now put them a half game behind Rhode Island, so they'll need to pull one up. Rhode Island will go against St. Joseph's this upcoming series in their last A-10 series of their year. St. Joe's is 4th in the conference, so you could see an upset, you could not. Rhode Island, of course, lost a game to Mason earlier in the year. Mason swept St. Joe's in their series against the Hawks. I don't know if St. Joe's can get it done against Rhode Island with that prolific scoring, but it's going to be tough. Mason needs a loss by the Rams.
They definitely do need that loss by the Rams, Shaun. I fully agree with you on that. But heading now into this Atlantic 10 playoff race, normally the team can get it done in some of these instances, but you really need a couple of those guys to really just put the team on their back. Who is going to be the outstanding player, in your opinion, that will put that team on their back into the A10 playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, you always need talent, right? Of course, across the roster, I look at 3 guys. James Quinn Irons is a monster in the box.
Yeah, he is.
This dude, 415 average. That's slightly gone down than it was earlier this year. He was in the 4.4 range.
Yeah, by the time he was in that Holy Cross game, he was at 4.4, 4.5.
My goodness, he was, and all year he's been amazing. 85 hits, that's 8th in the entire country. 73 RBIs, that's tied for 5th. This guy is the engine of the Mason offense. He has to continue that success in the playoffs. And then you look at Owen Hull. He just broke the single season record in Mason program history for stolen bases in a year.
He's a sophomore, isn't he?
Exactly. So that's another future piece that Mason's going to have. And he's inside the box, 392 average. He's got 78 hits, 73 runs. That's 4th in the country. This offense really flows to those top 2 guys. Owen Klein, of course, leads off for the Patriots, and then it's Hull and then Quinn Irons. But those 2 slots right there, important, extremely important for this Mason team headed into postseason play.
They've got a ton of depth. I mean, I see it every week when I'm watching their highlights and even games that I've called this year. I mean, 23 runs in an inning when they broke the NCAA record. That was a 40-year record.
It's unreal.
It's no joke at all. And I think heading into the A10, they can win the A10 championship, maybe even make a deeper run into the NCAA playoffs for what they did from 2023. They've got a lot of expectations now at the end of this year, heading into next year. Like you said, they're so young. They've got a lot of promise. What do you see for their future?
Yeah, honestly, and then just to touch on a little bit more of postseason play, I forgot about one player, Connor O'Hara, the ace for the Patriots on their team. He will be vital down the line. I really think this conference could come down to the pens for all of these teams around the country.
It normally does.
Connor O'Hara needs to be on his best in postseason play. He's had a couple of off games these past couple of times. He's 4th in the country, 3rd in the country in strikeouts with 79s, only 20 walks. He's had a great season, but he needs to continue that in postseason play in order to have success in postseason and hopefully make the NCAA tournament. But then looking at the future, I look at Shaun Camp, 5th-year head coach. He has really coached this team into not only playing up to their talent, but also playing team ball. You talked about it a little earlier. This team loves playing small ball. They are really good at laying down bunts. You see it in games. They do that more than any other team in the country. At least when you're watching it, they'll always show, and then they have the opportunity to pull out of it. They have the players on the roster that can go deep. And honestly, if O'Hara can deal, I don't see a team that can stop the Patriots.
And Shaun Camp is a homer, too. He grew up in the Fairfax area. He went to Mason right here, people. He went to the show. He came back here to coach at Mason. Shaun, we have looked at a lot of amazing highlights this year. What do we got next year in the show?
I think it's time for our most anticipated part of the show, the top 10 plays. So when we look at it, we've got back to February. Owen Hull gets a line drive to short, makes an incredible leaping catch on the backhand. What a first play to start us off.
What an amazing play. Shaun, we've got 9 more to go. Let's continue baseball here at 9. This is Towson. This is March. We'll look at it. Hits just a line shot right there, and then what a grab right there by the George Mason baseball team. We're still at 9 here, Shaun.
Yeah, Owen Hull with a fantastic grab in right field. Now we go to 8. Back to September. Beginning of the year, Jalen Lott with a great dig. Look at that pancake to keep it alive, and they end up getting the point. Another great play by the women's volleyball team.
Continuing on this count, let's continue looking at number 7, Alberti walk-off to put George Mason here first in the A10. What a great shot. Doesn't go over the wall, doesn't matter though. That was the nail in the coffin. That put him in first place back on April 25th. Shaun, what an amazing play.
Yeah, that was the game winner that you really started to think that this Mason team could have a shot, taking the lead in the A10. Back in second now. We'll see how that plays out the rest of the year. But now we look at number 6, women's soccer. Selamawit Caldart on a save back in October on the 27th. Look at that. The little punch to get it out of there. Great play by the goalkeeper.
What an amazing play. She really stretched out there. We'll keep going. Number 5. Now we're here in the top 5. We're back at baseball. James Quinirons. You can talk about him all day long. Normally you look at the hitting, but right here we look at an amazing snag. Goes and jumps over the wall. He uses that entire body frame of his. I know I couldn't do something like that. I can barely jump off the ground. Doesn't matter though. James, he can get the robbery going.
Yeah, 6'5", 230. That dude is as athletic as it gets on the baseball team. Now we go to number 4. My favorite call of the year. Softball. Logan Pickford sends one over the left field wall. The walk-off in the 10th inning against St. Joe's. Man, what a game and what a win for Logan Pickford.
She hit a bomb there for Logan Pickford. You see her coming around right there. I heard you on the call that day. All the fans are excited. You were excited. Our staff was excited here at Mason Cable. What an amazing play. We're going to continue going. We're here at the top 3. It's men's volleyball.
Big 3.
And we're going to look at it. Look at that play. And then look at the dig and save there by George Mason. They get it back over to continue it going. And nonetheless, they get the block right there. They get the point, but the dig was the big play.
That's not even the best dig we're going to see so far in this top 10. We'll get to that a little later.
We will.
But first, number 2. This was an absolutely bonkers play. So first, James Quinirons up to bat. He sends one over to right field. A little blooper that falls. Owen Hull going over to third, slides in head first. He's safe. Then they go back to second because Quinirons steals. He's safe. Second baseman loses the ball. Hull goes home and scores, and then Quinirons goes to third. When I was calling this, no one knew what was happening. The entire press box was freaking out. It was an amazing play.
You know I once did something like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was like 12. But it was
Cameras
literally...
weren't on? Cameras weren't on?
Cameras weren't
Cameras
on.
weren't
You know
on.
what I'm
Cameras
saying?
weren't
Sometimes
on.
the best stuff happens when the cameras aren't on, but the cameras were on here for number 1. Let's take a look at that best play. Men's volleyball, again, we're looking at it. And check out this amazing save, Shaun. Out of bounds. He sends it back over, and he gets the kill. Mason got the kill there. What an amazing play.
Yeah, Robbie Nardoni caught up to it. Just a last-ditch effort to keep it alive, and then Evangelista just punched it over to get the point, and it fell through the Charleston player's hands. Honestly, I think my favorite play, it's probably the Charleston play. That gym was packed on that Saturday, and once they made that play, the entire crowd was on their feet. They had all the momentum. That is what ended up sparking a comeback to get them to win in straight sets. That's got to be my favorite.
Man, I'll tell you this right now. I had a lot of favorite plays as well in that top 10. Really, it comes down to 2. Not 2, but the same situation. Both walk-offs. I mean, you got to have ice in the veins. I mean, right here, people, right there. You got to have ice, and they got to be ready to go. And both of those plays, both from softball and baseball, I would say those are my top favorite moments this year at Mason. What an amazing top 10 list, people. Shaun, to end the show, what do we got looking here for the future of George Mason heading into next year? What's your favorite part?
Yeah, it was an amazing 2024-2025 season, but we keep rolling, right? We're already looking to next year. I'm looking at the women's soccer team. We're going into year 2 of head coach Aaron Bruner at the helm. He is trying to do the same thing that the head coach of the men's soccer team is doing, implement that winning culture. He comes from Florida State. He was an assistant coach at Florida State that won the championship. I think they have a chance to really start to shape something in the women's program and really follow suit in the men.
I love that point from you, Shaun. I'm going to switch it over to both the basketball teams here at Mason. Both men and women, can they take that step up?
Yeah.
Now, they already took a step up this year, but what I mean by a step up, can they both not only win the Atlantic 10, can they both make NCAAs? The men's team was just enough right there, but they just barely missed that in the A10 final. They still made the NIT, but we want to see both teams make the NCAA. The women made the NCAA. Maybe they'll be able to make a little bit farther of a run. But ladies and gentlemen, that's it for the show. Shaun, it's been a pleasure here today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be the end of our show here. Shaun, any final words?
Yeah, I think honestly it's been a great year. This was really fun, kind of recapping all the stuff that happened this year. If you want to hear more of me, I'm going to be on the call a lot next year. Hopefully another 50 games across the year of all the sports. And yeah, it should be a good one.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone, to the Mason Sports Recap. Remember, you can catch many of George Mason's games on ESPN Plus all season long through next year, 2025-26. Shaun's going to be on the call. My name is Rodney Rhodes. Again, Shaun Gervase. So long from Fairfax. We'll see you next season.